Okay, so this session is an information session, an introduction to the Momentum program, and an opportunity for you folks to be able to ask some questions about it. So what I'll start with is I'll do a little bit of a spiel about the program and the technologies that we're using to make it work, and then give you to ask some questions. All right, so what is it is I guess the first question. And the Momentum program is a program designed to enhance employability. And we've been talking to employers, of course, and we know what they look for. And with roughly 7,000 law students coming onto the market every year, it's an employer's market. They have plenty to choose from, so they can be picky about what they want. And obviously they want good grades. That's a good starting point. But there are three other things that they're very keen on. One is extracurriculars, especially volunteering. Two is evidence of your abilities, because a degree, a certificate of your results only gives a very rough idea of what your abilities are and gives you a number. And they would like to see some actual evidence of your actual skills as well. And the third thing, which is outside of the scope here, is an honours degree, which is becoming more and more required, because not that employers are requiring it, but there are just so many students with honours degrees in the market. So the Momentum program will just leave the honours issue aside, although I'm always happy to answer questions about that. But the Momentum program is looking at those first couple of issues. It's looking at the need to do extracurriculars, have record of extracurriculars, and have evidence of your abilities in your portfolio that you can present to an employer and say, hey, not only have I got good grades for these subjects, but if you want to see me actually do a mock interview, here's a video of me doing a mock interview as part of a scenario. And you can actually see my interviewing skills in action. So this is a program that's designed for keen students, and you're here, so that means you're keen, and people who are interested in taking their qualifications to the next level. They're a self-paced series of courses, and at the moment we have 5 different courses available. You can do them at any time, and you can submit them for accreditation whenever you like. They form part of a standalone credential, and I'll talk about what digital badging is in a moment, but it's a credential that stands alone. But if you want to, you can do the 3rd year unit legal professional portfolio, and you can actually basically cash in these for credit within that subject. Because in the portfolio subject, you need to have something to put into your portfolio. You need evidence of what you can do. And this is a way in which you can start pretty much from the first semester, if you want to, start to accrue evidence and experience and work experience that you can put into your portfolio. So but by the time the final semester rolls around, you can basically have pretty much all of it done ahead of time. So the areas that we focused on at the moment, the first 5, and we will develop more over time, but these were the first ones we developed, are looking at skills in client interviewing, in creating legal information concepts, such as FAQs and information sheets and so on, law reform, and career planning, which is not so much something that employers will look for, but it will give you experience in job interviews, how to prepare for job interviews, how to present well in job interviews. So it's not a skill you'll necessarily be using in employment, but it's what you use to get employment. And there's a 5th credential, which is the fundamentals credential, which introduces this whole thing. It's the one you start with, and it sets you up with your portfolio. It shows you how to create a portfolio. It tells you what digital badges are, gives you an introduction to that, and gives you the lead in. So that's the one you start with, is law fundamentals, and you work your way through that one. It's quite a simple one to complete, and then you can work on the others. All right. So what are these digital badges? They're a new technology that were created by Mozilla, the creators of Firefox. And these badges are a way of, the technical term is micro-credentialing, creating these little credentials that used to be the sort of thing that you'd get a certificate for. But a certificate's a sort of an inert thing and people don't know quite what to do with it. You sort of scan a copy and stick it in your portfolio. Digital badges are quite interactive in some ways. A digital badge is a file that contains a set of information. It has who issued the badge, who received the badge, what the criteria for the badge was, and really, really importantly, links to digital evidence of that badge. So this is a file that you can add to your CV, you can add it to a job application letter, you can add it to your LinkedIn account, you can attach it anywhere you can attach a graphic file. So it's very, very versatile, and it allows an employer or someone that you share it with to actually interrogate the badge and have a look at what the evidence is, so that you can say, I've got a level 3 badge in client interviewing, and they can go, oh, what does that mean? I'll look at the criteria. The criteria sets up what you had to do to achieve that badge, and they can link on the digital evidence, and they can look at some evidence which shows that there's proof of your abilities. And that's different from badge to badge. We use a service called Credly, and there are links in our site to Credly and information in the fundamentals badge about how to do it. So don't worry too much about getting Credly set up. It's very, very simple. But it allows you at any time to apply for any of these badges and to attach your evidence, and it comes back to myself or one of the team who will look at it and evaluate your claim for that particular badge. All right, so badges are interesting in that they work alongside the curriculum, and it means a few things. One is that you don't have to try and force everyone to do it. Only the keen people will be doing them, so we're not going to be in a position where we have to try and strong arm people into groups and teams who are unwilling. And I know you folks all had experience of trying to work in groups of people who are reluctant, unwilling, and unable to find time to do things. And some of these, and I'll come to this in a moment, some of the badges do require a little bit of teamwork, but very small amount. And crucially, you can do badges at these credentials at any time. You don't have to worry about semester timelines. There are no due dates. It's something that's completely self-paced. So it's something that's revolutionising education. It's caught on really big in the United States, less so in Australia, less so in law schools. So it's another area in which we are pretty much leading the field, because innovation is what we do here. And you might be thinking, does this sound like Scout badges? Well, it's based on a similar idea. It's based on that idea of providing structured learning and providing you with resources and information to help you get to the next stage of your learning. But we have the ability to use the badging technology now that allows us to create this dynamic badge that you can stick on a job interview application, and an employer can then click links and see videos of you doing things and all sorts of other things. And at least until badging becomes the standard, it's going to be something that will impress a lot of employers as well, because no one else out there is going to have these. These are going to be something that'll be something that'll put you above other applicants. All right, now we can look at you can look at any of the badges and the supporting documents at our website, which hasn't had a formal launch yet, but is available, which is at CQU Law, one word, .net. And you can link down to the Momentum page. And I'll share the screen in a moment. And that should show you what I'm talking about. All right, hopefully you can all see that. This is the front page of the CQU Law website. And if you go to the left-hand bar, there's the Momentum program, although it'll look a little different if you're looking at this on your phone. And there's details here about the program. Very quickly. And the links to the badges available at the moment. As I said, we'll be developing more as we go. We'll explain these all here. So law fundamentals is that basic introduction, and it shouldn't take you too long to work through the workshops on those. Client interviewing, law concepts, career navigator, and law reform. Some of these badges you'll also connect to tasks you'll already be doing. So for instance, the law reform badge connects to tasks you're already doing in legal research. So you can actually double dip and you can do your assignments in some of these subjects, but also earn a badge for them along the way. And we also have some milestone badges, which are sort of badges you get for collecting other badges. And they're not necessarily ones that you're going to learn a lot from, but they're kind of incentives that if you actually manage to achieve more and do more badges, you can get badges that acknowledge that achievement. All right, I want to quickly talk about the structure we use for our badges, because this is something, again, that is quite distinctive and innovative that we're doing. Our badges each have 3 levels to them. There's a level 1 badge, level 2 badge, level 3 badge, and you have to do the level 1 badge before you can do the level 2 badge, and then you do the level 3 badge. And this is to provide structure and foundation for your learning. So each of the badges has a different theme or a different aspect to it. The level 1 badges are all observation badges, and they require you to observe something, a seminar, or for the interviewing one, observe an actual interview. And because we're an online program, we'll provide you with opportunities each term to observe these things. And there'll be the CQ Community Legal Centre will provide opportunities, but you can find your own opportunities as well. That's another good thing about badges. If you're really keen and you've got something that you think will work, you're able to arrange your own as well. All right, so level 1 is observe. Level 2 is practice, which is an exercise usually done with a small group of people where you get to practice those skills. And there's a supporting workshop which explains what those skills are and gives you some ideas of what to do. And the level 3 badge is apply, where you actually work with a mentor to actually perform those particular tasks. And again, this is something you'll organise yourself, but the early levels of these, the earlier levels of badges should give you the foundation from which you can do that, and the ability to say, I've been trained in this field, can I have an opportunity to perform there? So to give you an example, the client interviewing badge, level 1, observe, you merely have to observe a client interview, and there's plenty of opportunities throughout the term to do that with the CLC, and write a short reflection in a blog and send us a link to that. Level 2 practice involves an interviewing exercise where you work with a team and you interview each other and see how you go and learn from that. And level 3 is when you actually do a client interview as under the supervision of the solicitor. And again, the CQ CLC will be providing opportunities to do this, but it's the sort of thing where you'll need to be, first of all, have those credentials to start with, but also be able to build a relationship with those people and to convince them that you're a safe person to let loose with a client. So you may have to do a little bit more than just observe one client interview for them to be willing to give you access to a real client that's level 3. You might have to observe quite a few client interviews, and you may have to be in communication with the CLC and let them get to know you to do that. But again, this is something you can do online. You can do in the evenings, and it's something that is quite flexible. All right, there are 2 higher level advanced badges that are above and beyond, and they don't have supporting materials that explain them. But they're ones that you basically forge for yourself. You forge your own path. Level 4 is lead, which is mainly a mentoring badge where you actually work with others. And what you can do is actually become a mentor to other students who want to do the lower level badges, and you can help them out. And level 5 is innovate, where you've done something really, really special and innovative. You might have developed a new website or done something that's actually changed the field. So obviously those high level badges, much, much higher level, harder to achieve and everything else. The core 3 basic badges are what most people will be looking at. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. So that's primarily what I wanted to speak about. And just to reiterate, the CQUlaw.net page has all the details there and gives you an opportunity to read in more depth what it's all about. And also consider that if you want to pick up the legal professional portfolio subject as well, it's by no means required for the Momentum program. You don't have to enroll in that subject at all. But if you've done some badges, it's basically a way of earning yourself some credit towards completion of that subject as you go, so that when you're in your final term and you've got lots of other pressures on you, you can basically say, well, I've got this one, 80% done. I've got a couple of things to finish up, but I can self-pace that particular unit. All right, that is the spiel. We now have an opportunity I'll answer any questions you might have. Something you want me to describe in more depth, please go ahead. But I'll open the floor to questions now. Or is everyone just confused?
And we're at the Community Legal Centre in Rockhampton. So this is a Thursday night.
I think we need, whoever's speaking needs to be a bit closer to their microphone. It was very, very soft.
How's that?
Bit better, yeah.
I might have to just check and make sure it's the right one. Yep.
Well, you can always type your question. A lot of microphones you really got to sit on top of. I notice Wayne Jones is with us too, and Wayne and Anna as well are from work with the Central Queensland Community Legal Centre. Wayne or Anna, did you have comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, hi everyone. I don't know if my microphone's going to work. Okay. I think Angelina, you've got your microphone on. So I don't know. I missed a little bit of that. Sorry, Scott. But I was just wondering, what's the value in students doing this? I'm presuming you probably mentioned that at the start. But one of the articles I read recently in the Lawyers Weekly magazine that gets produced, you can subscribe to it, was talking about those other skills. So, when we talk about grades being important, or students focusing on grades going out into graduate employment, actually it's the other things that employers are looking at. So, if you've all done Torts A and Torts B with me, we focus on reflection and, resilience and all of those alternative skills. And this Momentum program kind of fits into that in terms of building that other portfolio of skills that, set you apart from how many graduates was it? 7,000 graduates or 1,500 graduates going out into the workplace every year. So,
yep, 7,000 plus those who haven't managed to find work from the previous years, or those who are looking for other jobs who have been employed. So it does kind of compound. Yeah, the value is a few things, and it's one of those areas. I really don't like the term soft skills because I think it makes it sound like it's weak. And I have fights with I have altercations with Will people all the time. I'm going, oh no, soft skills are what it's all about. But employers want people who have diverse skills, who can work with other people. And frankly, I was talking to some partners in a very, very prestigious firm who were saying they're sick of employing people who have straight HDs from Melbourne or Monash, who have nothing else. And when they put them on a task, they realise the reason they have straight HDs is that they just can't communicate with other people. They can do exams really, really well, but they can't actually deal with other people. So employers are definitely in favour of this approach. I mean, it's no replacement for good grades, but it is something that can tip the balance. I've got a couple of questions in the comments in the chat. Ash said, Do the practice skills have to be done with students, or can you do it with colleagues, for example? There's no reason why you can't do it with colleagues or other people. We are considering the options of being able to badge people who are non-students. We haven't thought that one through completely yet, but there is certainly, I don't think, any reason why, if you had colleagues who also wanted to achieve these badges, we couldn't put them in the program somehow and help them through. Next question, are they compulsory for legal professional portfolio? No, but you need something in your portfolio for that subject. So they're a good way to be able to build that as you go. And obviously the people who have a set of badges before they go in are going to be have a much easier time doing it over that broader time period. But for that program, you really need to be able to have practical experiences as part of it to show off your skills to the world. All right. All the chat window is beginning to heat up. From Angelina, I was approached by a lecturer about this due to some of what I've done. Can we apply for past things we have done? Yes, you can. You still have to apply. You still have to do each of the stages here. So, for instance, in the interviewing one, if you've done interviewing, you can apply for the level 2 one, but you still have to do the level 1 one and do the observation. However, that's not very onerous. And with all these skills, you really need to be observing more than once anyway. So it's not like you do it once and it's right, that's it. I've seen an interview. I know everything about interviews. You know, I've thrown a cricket ball once now. I'm brilliant at cricket. So there's no reason why you can't go back, observe an interview and do that first badge. And the level 1 badges are quite straightforward, quite easy to do. But it doesn't mean that then you didn't have to necessarily have done those tasks in sequence. And if you've got the interviewing task that you did in Stephen Colbrand's subject, you could submit that as the second stage or something similar. All right, from Ash, to put 7,000 grads in context, there are only 60,000 practicing lawyers Australia-wide. Yeah, there's some scary stats. I mean, there are more undergrad students than there have ever been lawyers in the entire history of Australia. But the good part of this is that employability is still quite strong with law graduates. It's around 70%, but you don't want to be in the 30%. 70% is good, but it's not if you're on the other side of the 70.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'll read ahead.
I was just thinking in terms of Wayne and I are putting together a guest lecture series for this year, and one of the themes that we're exploring with guest lecturers is this idea of alternative law careers. So, you get your law degree, you can go into, practice, or what else is there available. So we've got a really great speaker coming up called Richard, I think his last name's Gifford, from the Legal Forecast. He runs student hackathons, which is now like a global phenomenon. And it's really quite interesting to see that this new I'm going to say cross-pollination, but like interdisciplinary work being done between IT, business, law, and, we all know social innovation is a big key theme through the university at the moment. So there's lots of opportunities elsewhere, but I think these badges, and hopefully when we grow the program as well, can still help you set you up for those alternative career paths.
And on that point, we are open to discussion with people who say, I'd really like a credential that says I can do this. Are you interested in creating? And if enough people are interested in it, we will put the work in to create the credential that goes with that. We just don't know what the demand is at the moment. Question from Clarissa. How would you utilise what you've done during work to apply for a badge? Is there a requirement of a supervising solicitor in the role of the firm? The badges are all different. So, for instance, the client interviewing badge, you'd need to have, for the level 3 badge, you would need to have a supervising solicitor or mentor who would work with you to do the interview under supervision and then give you feedback on it. But the level 3 law reform one, for instance, you only have to put a submission into a law reform inquiry, which doesn't require any supervision at all. So some of these things you may have done in your workplace, the Law Concepts badge requires you to create an actual FAQ or information sheet for use with, you know, real people and clients, you may have done that, in which case that's great. You still have to do level 1 and level 2. You don't get to skip over that, but you then can say, okay, I can submit that what I've already done for work there. So it's very, very flexible, and we don't want to put you into those bottlenecks where we say, oh, well, you've got to do everything in sequence, and okay, mate, you may be a very experienced interviewer, but we're not going to, you know, we're going to make you do more interviews later on or whatever. So we want to be as flexible as possible, but we also want to make sure everyone's done the fundamentals and done the practice, as well as practical experience. Even if you've got previous practical experience, we want to just make sure we've ticked those boxes. Okay. Excellent. So we have time for more questions if people have them. Otherwise, you can email me directly, or the group, the law school's email is law@cqu.edu.au, and that will come to myself and Stephen, and we can read those. So you've got a couple of options for email. There will be some of these events each term for your observed badges. They'll be run through the Community Legal Centre each term, and I believe Facebook will be the place that those will be promoted and advertised. So keep an eye on the CQU Law Facebook page if you want to see upcoming events. But some of those are ones that you can organise for yourself as well, remember. So the interviewing one, if you are working in a workplace where interviews are done, by all means, get permission from the people you work with to sit in on an interview. And you can do that in your own time. But we're trying to provide as much support as possible through the CLC for people who don't have those sorts of opportunities. All right. Well, that's been hopefully succinct. Hopefully give you a bit of a taste of what the program's all about, and the ways in which, you know, education is changing. Always available for questions, comments, whatever. If you want to organise an interview time, a consultation time, and you want to have a chat face to face or Zoom to Zoom, I'm happy to do that as well.
Can you hear me, Scott? We're having mic. Oh, okay. We're having mic problems before. We're also being told our internet connection is unstable. But anyway, we're live from the Community Legal Centre in Rockhampton, which is the centre Scott's been talking about. And in the background is Wendy. And Wendy looks after the clinic on a Thursday evening. So I'd be happy to hear from anybody who would like to be involved in Thursday night clinic. And you can certainly start with us by just observing client interviews on a Thursday evening. You can do that by video link, and we can set that up without too much difficulty. The only thing I need to hear from you in advance so that we can get you to sign up confidentiality agreements and all the usual things that you would need to do if you were joining a law firm, of course, just making sure that you were able to access confidential information, and then you understood all the rules around and not taking things away from the centre, etc. So Jake and Justin are here. Jake's new to the centre. Justin's been as old as the hills. He's been coming in and out of the centre for quite a while, and he has already worked his way through those various levels without necessarily getting the badges at this stage. But Justin is now our go-to person for completing forms, typically small debt forms for employment law problems, people that are chasing unpaid wages. So what we've got on offer would be observing on a Thursday evening. the solicitors would ordinarily ask you if they wanted you to do some research, look something up. Typically, it might be, if we're in an employment law session, for example, the question might be, Justin's been working in the job for 3 years. How much is his redundancy pay? Can you quickly have a look at the section in the Fair Work Act for me and just let me know what that is? That sort of thing, so the interview can continue. And then we're working at the moment on a clinic on Friday morning where you can help clients face-to-face but over the camera complete forms like QCAT, small claim forms, traffic forms like applications for restricted driver's licences, those sort of things. The small claims I mentioned before, criminal compensation forms, anti-discrimination complaint forms, and they'd all be where you'd be assisting a client to do that. You'd be doing the first draft, so then you're getting most of the work done so that the solicitor can have a look at the material and it's mostly done. So those sorts of things on a Friday. So anyone's interested in it, yeah, just email me direct. And I've got to ask now, is that Joy from Gympie who joined us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Hello, Joy.
Hi. I never sent you an email back. Apologies for that. Just got busy.
That's all right. You'd be tied up organising the muster, I'd imagine.
Isn't that in August?
I don't know, but there'd be a lot of organisation going to it, I would have thought, Joy. Nice to see you back.
Thank you.
And you were telling me the other day, Wayne, that you might have an opportunity coming up fairly soon in the law reform front for students to talk about a particular law reform issue.
Yeah, we've always got a few on the go. Just to let you know where that fits into the scheme of things, the centre signs a funding agreement, and it's meant to then, in exchange for receiving the funds, it's meant to perform so many services in a year. And one of the things it is meant to do is some commentary on law reform. Now, sometimes it's through our peak body, CLCs of Queensland, but there's usually a topic of interest that we're making a contribution around. We've got two on the go at the moment. One's a little bit I hadn't thought of before. We've had a complaint about the inflexibility of the Fair Work Act provisions, which deal with when you must start taking your maternity leave. And the question arose from a mother who had quite a premature baby, and the baby was being cared for by the hospital for quite a few weeks. So she didn't necessarily want to trigger her 12 months of her maternity leave at that point, but the Act doesn't allow for it. So there's a group working on that. There's another group, I'm afraid, I don't think Flora is available at the moment, looking at issues around Indigenous families accessing the testator's family maintenance provisions when a family member dies without leaving a will. Often through kinship arrangements, somebody who's your auntie might not necessarily be your auntie in the true sense, or someone may have acted as your mother, and that's not necessarily covered in the black and white legislation of the Succession Act. So just a couple of examples, but of the sorts of things. But students might also be aware of other issues where the government's called for submissions on various things. There was, anyway, that's just a couple of examples. Now, sorry, I'll just to finish on that. So the student would do the research work, and we would just put that into the pot of the total amount of research that we were sending back, for example, to Community Legal Centres Queensland. Does that answer that question?
It does for me, but I'm happy to hear other questions.
Actually, just on that, Flora is here. Do you want to know a little bit more about that Indigenous issue?
Yeah, by all means.
Top seats. Can you see her?
Hi, how are we? Hello.
Yeah, go for it. I've just said that, well, we're talking about a couple of issues. One that was to do with the Fair Work legislation. This one, though, about this one's based on an experience that you've actually had, isn't it? Where you've had someone who might expect to take a benefit under testator's family maintenance provision.
Yeah, so there's a uniform, well, there's two things happening in, should be happening in succession law world. The first is that the uniform succession laws have been talked about now for some years, and unfortunately the states have yet to agree on changes that will suit all of the states. So for succession lawyers, solicitors, the problem there is that nowadays people own property in all states of Australia, and you can actually have different laws applying to different property. So if you own real property in Queensland but shares with a share registry in Sydney, the question is, and let's say the shares are the major component of the estate, the question then is, does New South Wales law apply because it's the predominant asset and is therefore the national estate, which is clawing back or you know, all sorts of other things? Does that apply over the Queensland law? So that's an interesting law reform that actually needs to happen, and the politics need to get out of that any old time soon would be good. But in another part of succession law, what happens with Indigenous and Torres Strait Island people, they're treated somewhat differently on intestacy. So intestacy is where you die without a will. If a non-Indigenous and non-Torres Strait Islander person dies without a will, there's a part of the Succession Act that effectively goes out in concentric circles as to who the assets go to. So the inner circle is the spouse, then it's, if there's no spouse, the children, if there's no spouse and children, it's parents, and it goes like that. For Aboriginal people, their idea, their culture of family is very, very different to ours, incredibly different. It works on a kinship model, and I won't even go into all of that. There's lots of people who are far more knowledgeable in those fields than I am. But what actually happens is that if, and 90%, give or take, of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people don't have wills because they don't talk about death. So it's really hard to do a will and not talk about death because they kind of go hand in hand. So there's a large number of the population of Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders who don't have a will. If the family don't step up and apply to court to become administrators and say they don't live in a community with elders who know who the family, their family are, then the actual decision of where the property goes to a bureaucrat. It goes to a government bureaucrat who then makes this fantastic decision. One thing that we had actually happen here is that a young man passed away. Mum and Dad had separated and they were from different countries. So I'm sure you all know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people talk about their country as where they came from, their home. And it depended on which one of Mum or Dad applied to the court first to be administrator as to where the child would be buried, because Dad's home country was northern Western Australia and Mum's home country was somewhere in Queensland. So it became like a race to court effectively, which is a tragedy when you think about, given the fact that a person's body in that culture and going back to country is an incredibly important thing to them. And then it became this thing between Mum and Dad, So that's certainly a great area for law reform.
So if anybody was interested in helping, in assisting, again, same thing, contact me and we'll see if there's enough interest to get a group together to at least tease out a few issues and see what research could be done. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
And just to summarise...
They're just
very, very briefly, what that means for badging, your level 1 badge for law reform is to attend an information session and to write a short report on it. So you'd go along to a discussion session with Flora and Wayne and write your thoughts about it. Level 2 is an exercise to do with some other people about what law reform is and how it works. And level 3 would be being either by yourself or part of a team, in this case, putting in an actual submission to an actual report. And there's level 1, 2, and 3 of your law reform badges. Did I cut you off, Wayne? Were you in mid-thought?
No, that was about it. Look, I guess I'm making the offer from the point of view of the Community Legal Centre here in Rockhampton, but there are community legal centres throughout the country. There's a national group called NACLAC, the National Association of Community Legal Centres, NACLAC. So they have a web page. If you have a look, if you're in a state other than Queensland, have a look, see. Joy, I don't know whether there is one in Gympie. I'm not sure about that. I know there's Harvey Bay, not a million miles away. There's certainly a very active community legal centre at Taylor Street at Harvey Bay as well. But it certainly wouldn't hurt to make contact with your nearest community legal centre and see if there's anything you can do to become involved.
Excellent. Oh, well, if there are no other questions, if there are other questions, now's the time to ask them.
Nick's, I was just going to say, Nick's asked about the website address for, if you just type in Queensland CLC or NACLC, I think it is, on NACLAC, there you go.
Cool.
There's lots, like the more metro based you are, the more options you'll have in terms of community legal centres. And even if you do a quick search on things like social media, you will find that community legal centres will be present on things like Twitter. And we went to a conference earlier this year, and one of the things that they were saying was, we don't go on Twitter necessarily to talk to anyone else, but make statements to the government, because, they're the ones who, deal with our funding, and they only listen to us when we're on Twitter. So things like that, pretty important to little community legal centres. So make sure you do seek out opportunities that are close to you.
And there are specialist ones too. The more you're in the urban areas, there's like elder law and youth law, and there's an animal rights based one. So yeah, further out you go, the more they have to do everything. But in the urban areas, there are often very, very specialised ones, and they may be interested in working remotely. A lot of CLCs are still not really up there with the technologies that we use, but they may be willing to learn. All right, folks.
Joy, can I just mention, Joyce just, this is Joy from Gympie. Joy from Gympie just made a very good point about the Sunshine Coast, a big lineup for people wanting to be volunteers down there. But Joy, what we might be able to do, if you contacted me and if you wanted to go and visit one of their sessions, they'll often have remote sessions. Like they might have an advice session at Noosa and just be looking for a couple of student helpers for that night, in which case we might be able to slide you in under the radar. I think probably for permanent volunteers, people are going on a weekly basis. Yeah, I suspect they're probably lined up. But we've been approached in the past by the Community Legal Centre for the Sunshine Coast looking for helpers just to work for a couple of hours on an evening clinic. So give me a call and I can make some inquiries.
And bear in mind, for a lot of the badges, you only have to go to an information session about a particular thing. So you don't even have to like sign up as a volunteer. They don't have to be a CLC. It could just be an interesting event you attended, or it could be if you can find the right thing, there could be a video like a TED talk or something that was really useful, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. All right, folks. Well, thank you for your attendance.